In the heart of Karda Nui, the Toa Nuva find themselves at the center of a struggle that will decide the future of existence. The Brotherhood of Makuta, relentless in their pursuit of dominance, has unleashed an invasion that threatens to drown the last bastion of light in darkness. But how did we arrive at this critical moment? In our last episode, the Baraki battled the Tormari for control of the Mask of Life. Makuta Teridax descended into the chaos, clashing with Kazani, Brutaka, Hydraxan, and an army of sea monsters. Meanwhile, the Toa Mari destroyed the great cord-binding Mari Nui to Voya Nui, fulfilling an ancient prophecy and sending the underwater city into ruin. Even as the Baraki hunted them relentlessly, the Tormari fought with everything they had, and their unity was tested to its limits. Then came the ultimate act of heroism. Av-Matoran, armed with the Mask of Life, gave his own life to save Mata Nui and the universe. His sacrifice was a moment of triumph and heartbreak, but it was only the beginning of a greater conflict. Now, the battle shifts to Karda Nui, the very heart of the universe, where the Toa Nuva are tasked with their greatest challenge yet, reawakening Mata Nui. The Brotherhood of Makuta has brought the full force of its armies, spreading shadow across the light-filled skies of Karda Nui. 1 week before Matora made his noble sacrifice, life in Karda Nui seemed peaceful. Tama, an Av-Matoran of light, idly completed his routine tasks with his aloof partner Gavla. Tama reflected on how the villagers had recovered after centuries of hardship. The Av-Matoran had originally lived in giant stalactites above Karda Nui, protecting them from the powerful energy storms that used to dominate the region. But the giant earthquakes of the Great Cataclysm had caused the stalactites to fall to the ground, and many Matoran had been lost. Fortunately, the giant storms also stopped simultaneously, for reasons unknown to the surviving Matoran, allowing them to rebuild and thrive. As Tama pondered, a strange shadowy figure suddenly streaked across the sky, catching Tama's attention. Before he could investigate, Gavla disappeared without a trace. Moments later, Tama witnessed something horrifying. Gavla re-emerged, grotesquely transformed into a monstrous, winged being radiating shadow. When Tama tried to approach her, she attacked him with bolts of shadow energy, declaring that she had embraced the darkness. She urged him to do the same, claiming it brought clarity and power. Terrified, Tama fled to the village, only to find an even more harrowing sight. Shadow Matoran overran his home. His friends and neighbors had been corrupted by shadow leeches, creatures capable of draining their light and turning them into creatures of darkness. Tama managed to escape, dodging the attacks of the Shadow Matoran and leaving them behind. Filled with urgency, he vowed to reach the other villages and warn them before the shadow consumed all of Karda Nui. A week after the Shadow Matoran began spreading across Karda Nui, in the last free Matoran village, Tama and the other Av-Matoran hid in an underground shelter, surrounded by shadow leeches and under constant threat from the Makuta, who had launched a full-scale invasion of Karda Nui. Phantoka, restless and anxious, questioned why their friend Radiak hadn't returned. But Tama knew the truth. Anyone caught outside was likely already lost to the shadow. Despite the hopelessness, Tama and the Matoran held on, unwilling to risk defeat, but unsure if help would ever come. The absence of their former leader, Kirop, weighed heavily on Tama. Kirop had once been a wise and inspiring figure, but had fallen victim to a shadow leech during an attack 6 days earlier. All seemed hopeless until an unexpected ray of hope suddenly appeared. Meanwhile, Makuta Antros observed the desolate region. Once a place of beauty, it had become a realm of fear and chaos under the Makuta's rule. Kyrox, a Makuta scientist, joined Antros on the ledge, voicing his frustration at the stubbornness of the Matoran. Antros dismissed his complaints, knowing that their resistance would ultimately amount to nothing. As they talked, Vampra, the silent and predatory Makuta, dove toward one of the last free Matoran villages. Cutting through the massive waterfall that bisected Karda Nui, Vampra unknowingly missed an important moment of destiny just above him. From the heavens, Matoro, the white-armored Toa of Ice, plunged into the waterfall, clutching the Mask of Life, which radiated a brilliant, growing light. The light from the mask soon engulfed all of Karda Nui, blinding the Makuta mid-flight and leaving them disoriented. Following the blinding explosion of light from the Mask of Life, the Av-Matoran gained an opportunity to fight back against the Makuta, who had been blinded by the surge. The Matoran launched an aerial assault, something they never could have attempted before. However, the Makuta quickly adapted by employing Shadow Matoran as riders, using them as eyes to guide their movements. In a tense skirmish, the Makuta unleashed devastating gravity powers and Teridax pods filled with shadow leeches, forcing the Av-Matoran to retreat with heavy losses. As hope dwindled, 6 figures suddenly appeared to block their escape. The Toa Nuva had arrived. The Toa Nuva, abruptly transported from Phantoka to Karda Nui, found themselves in the midst of chaos. Toa Nuva wasted no time, charging headlong into the fray. Toa Nuva, thrilled by his new ability to soar through the skies, reveled in the aerial combat. Meanwhile, Toa Nuva, ever the leader, wrestled with the chaos of battle. Observing the Makuta's dependency on their Matoran riders to navigate the battlefield, Toa devised a plan to target the riders and disrupt the enemy's coordination. The Toa Nuva's combined efforts shifted the tide of the battle, forcing the Makuta to retreat. As the Toa regrouped, Pohatu made a startling realization. Though the land was barely recognizable, he remembered its significance. The Toa Nuva weren't just on a new battlefield. They had returned to Karda Nui, a place tied deeply to their forgotten past and destiny. Despite the urgency of the situation, the Toa were preoccupied by Pohatu's realization. They had been in Karda Nui before. This revelation triggered fragments of memories from a time long forgotten, leaving them shaken and searching for answers. Kopaka remembered training on Daxia many years ago, before being sent to Karda Nui, where Matoran were working and needed protection. Tahu added that their mission involved containing dangerous energy spikes that were affecting the Rahi, but beyond that, their memories failed, leaving a critical gap in their understanding of their past. Turning to the mission at hand, Photok confirmed Tahu's worst fear. The attackers were indeed Makuta, aided by corrupted Matoran. The Toa Nuva was stunned to hear from Tamma about a white armored figure falling with a glowing Kanohi mask just before the explosion of light that revived Mata Nui. They realized it must have been Matoro, who sacrificed himself using the Mask of Life to save the universe. However, the mask's fate remained uncertain. The Av-Matoran speculated it had fallen into the swamp below, and Tahu insisted they find it before the Makuta. The team decided to split up. Liwa, Pohatu, and Kopaka would remain in the skies to protect the Matoran and battle the Makuta, while Tahu, Gali, and Onua descended into the swamp to retrieve the mask. As the teams prepared, Solek nervously approached Kopaka, revealing a fragment of a keystone. The legend said the keystones were vital to awakening Mata Nui, but the pieces had been scattered. Solek explained that Kirop held one piece, the Makuta had seized another, and 3 remained missing. To save Mata Nui, these keystones would need to be found. Elsewhere, in the depths of the swamp, the Kanohi Ignika, Mask of Life, stirred for the first time since the explosion of light. Its presence flickered, unnoticed by the creatures of the murky waters as it began to sense its surroundings. Water, mud, and sea life surrounded it, but it also detected an ominous threat. 3 powerful, malevolent beings nearby. The mask knew they would seek to claim it and contemplated creating guardians. Yet memories of flawed creations like the Venomil and Hydraxon led it to reconsider. Instead, the Ignika recalled its last bearer, Matoro, the Toa who sacrificed himself to save the universe. Matoro's courage and selflessness had left an impression on the mask, an object used to being feared and fought over. For the first time, the Ignika began to wonder, what would it mean to live, to feel, or to fight for something? The Ignika drew protodermis and matter from the swamp, shaping them into a new form. As it gave this body limbs, hands, and a face, the mask embraced the idea of becoming Toa Ignika. The Ignika used its power to craft a vehicle, drawing inspiration from the Matoran of Mari Nui. Confident in its creation, Toa Ignika climbed aboard, ascending from the swamp into the air. Below, it sensed the anger of the malevolent beings it sought to evade. Above, it felt a familiar energy, the energy of 6 Toa. With curiosity and hope, Toa Ignika surged toward the sky, seeking these new beings. Perhaps, for the first time, it would find allies, perhaps even friends. Far away, the Makuta gathered in their mad scientist Mutran's shadowy cave. Kirox observed with disdain as his fellow Makuta worked on a new flying Rahi, designed to carry an urgent message out of Karda Nui. The Rahi would carry Vikan, Mutran's mutated assistant, out of Karda Nui to Destral, where Antros's summons to Icarax would be delivered. Mutran and Kirox were stunned by the decision to involve Icarax, a Makuta infamous for his violent, uncontrollable nature. Antros, however, emphasized the Toa's history of defying the Brotherhood, warning against underestimating them. He was determined to crush them completely and believed Icarax's destructive force was necessary for that goal. Reluctantly, Vikan mounted the monstrous Rahi and flew through the mists of Karda Nui, carefully avoiding the Toa Nuva. Now en route to Destral, Vikan reflected grimly on his fate. He knew that he was unlikely to survive an encounter with the ruthless Icarax. Surprisingly soon after, Vikan's journey to Destral was concluded. Using its power to teleport to any location in the universe, Destral had been much closer to Karda Nui than Vikan would have liked. The Brotherhood's island fortress loomed ominously, its metallic and stone structure bristling with weapons, guards, and trophies from conquered worlds. Vikan, clutching his tablet of transit, was ushered inside by Visorak and Rakshi patrols, their predatory gazes heightening his sense of dread. Inside, he found Icarax seated upon Teridax's ebony throne, wearing the legendary Mask of Shadows. The Dark Makuta radiated power and disdain, his massive form intimidating even the most hardened Brotherhood agents. With Teridax's disappearance, the traitorous Icarax had declared himself the new ruler of the Brotherhood. Icarax listened to Vikan's message with thinly veiled contempt, enraged that Antros presumed to summon him like a subordinate. Though furious, Icarax ultimately decided to heed the call, more for his own ambition than obedience. Vikan fled Destral, terrified by the destructive power that would soon be unleashed in Karda Nui. Inside the last free Matoran village, Kopaka pondered on how to defeat the Makuta. Kopaka knew hiding behind defenses would only delay the inevitable. The odds were overwhelming, and the Shadow Matoran kept coming, with the source of the Shadow Leeches concealed by the impenetrable mist. Forming an ice bridge, Kopaka slid toward a captured village where the Shadow Matoran Kirop had fallen. Acting swiftly to avoid more corrupted arrivals, he retrieved the Shadow Matoran, hoping to use him to turn the tide of the battle. Imprisoned by the Toa Nuva, Kirop overheard the Toa talking loudly about their apparent plan to destroy the Shadow Leeches and their source. Alarmed that they might have discovered Mutran's hive, he blasted his way out of captivity and fled to warn the Makuta. Unbeknownst to him, this was exactly what the Toa had hoped for. Following at a safe distance, the 3 Toa and 3 Matoran trailed Kirop through the mists, determined to find the Leech hive and cut off the Brotherhood's ability to corrupt more Matoran. During the pursuit, the Toa noticed a mysterious figure following them. The being, who resembled a Toa, demonstrated incredible power by stopping a massive Rahi midair with a mere gesture, causing it to plummet lifelessly into the swamp. Realizing this newcomer was no ordinary being, the Toa allowed him to join their group. Kirop reached the hive and delivered his warning, only for Mutran to realize the Toa were already closing in. The hive's misty surroundings had hidden it from Kopaka's Kanohi vision, but now its location was revealed. As Kirop was chastised for leading the enemy to their doorstep, the Toa launched their attack. Pahatu and Lewa bombarded the entrance, weakening it before the Av-Matoran used their light-based powers to blast the gateway open. Inside, the hive proved larger and more labyrinthine than it appeared from the outside, its tunnels dripping with slime and shadow. The Toa Nuva split up. Pohatu, Leva, Tama, Phantoka, and Kanohi Ignika rushed deeper into the hive to locate and destroy the Shadow Leeches. Meanwhile, Kopaka and Solek confronted Mutran directly. The Toa Nuva's descent into the hive's labyrinthine tunnels remained eerily quiet. The Shadow Leeches they sought were nowhere to be found. The tunnels stretched impossibly far, their dimensions defying logic. The search came to a halt at a dead end. As the group deliberated their next move, the air suddenly shifted, heavy with a foreboding presence. Turning, they found that Toa Ignika had disappeared, and that they were now confronted by a massive, serpent-like creature, its pale flesh glistening with slime, its gaping maw revealing rows of jagged teeth. Believing it to be an enemy, the group launched a coordinated assault. Light and elemental blasts struck the creature, but its hide was impervious to their efforts. In retaliation, the creature unleashed beams of force, scattering the Toa and Matoran like leaves in a storm. Unbeknownst to them, the creature was actually the confused Toa Ignika, an illusion conjured by the Makuta. Ignika had lashed out instinctively. As he drained the life force of the group, Ignika's confusion deepened. He could not understand why those he had hoped to join had turned against him. The illusion persisted until Pahatu, recognizing the creature's true illusory nature, disrupted it with his elemental powers. The monstrous form vanished, replaced by a stunned Toa Ignika. Though tensions lingered, the group realized their mistake, and the conflict subsided. Elsewhere in the hive, Kopaka faced a dire confrontation with Mutran. The Makuta loomed over Solek's unconscious form, his twisted mind reveling in the chaos. Kopaka prepared to attack, but Mutran's mental assault struck first, flooding the Toa's mind with doubts and fears. For a fleeting moment, Kopaka faltered, his usually unshakable resolve wavering. Mutran capitalized on the hesitation, closing the distance and disarming Kopaka with calculated precision. As he tightened his grip, shadows encroached on the Toa's mind, threatening to overwhelm him completely. Solek, regaining consciousness, intervened in the nick of time. Summoning light energy, the Matoran deflected Mutran's shadow attack, disrupting his hold on Kopaka. Freed from the Makuta's grip, the Toa retaliated with a relentless ice barrage, encasing Mutran in a tomb of frost. Despite the Toa's victories, the reprieve was fleeting. The hive's entrance burst open, revealing Antros, Kirox and Vampra, accompanied by Shadow Matoran reinforcements. Darkness consumed the cavern as Vampra used his powers to blind the Toa and Matoran. Antros completed the assault by using his magnetic abilities to pin them to the hive walls, rendering them helpless. The Toa Nuva awoke chained to the cold walls of the hive. The proto-steel bindings were thick and nearly impervious to strength alone, even for Pahatu. Escape seemed out of reach. Any use of their elemental powers would send a telepathic signal to their captors, Vampra and Kirox, who were holding the Matoran hostage elsewhere in the hive. Mutran, ever the twisted scientist, revealed the true horror of the hive. Vats brimming with half-formed shadow leeches, hidden from sight by his mastery of mental illusions. Mutran retrieved a squirming shadow leech from one of the tanks and approached Lewa. The creature hissed and writhed, eager to drain the light from its victim and transform the Toa into a servant of shadow. Lewa struggled against his chains as the leech was brought closer, its dark energy palpable. Pohatu's sharp mind proved more valuable than brute strength. He used his elemental power subtly, weakening the stone beneath Antros and Mutran's feet. As the ground gave way, the Makuta stumbled, granting Pohatu the distraction he needed. Vibrating at high speed, he phased through his chains and freed himself. Moving with lightning precision, he liberated Lewa, Kopaka, and Toa Ignika, who had now regained consciousness. The freed Toa launched a counterattack, forcing Antros and Mutran into a temporary retreat. Pahatu raced through the hive's corridors, locating the Matoran prisoners and bringing them back to rejoin the team. Together, they turned their attention to the Vats, the source of the shadow leeches. Using their elemental powers, the Toa shattered the tanks, spilling the corrupted krater and unfinished leeches across the floor. Their victory was short-lived, however, as Vampra and Kirox arrived to block the hive's entrance. A fierce battle ensued, but Pohatu, using his Kanohi Nuva mask of speed, gave the team a crucial advantage. Sharing his power with the others, he allowed them to move at near impossible velocities, disorienting the Makuta and enabling their escape. As they emerged into the open sky, the Toa regrouped and turned their attention to the hive itself. Combining their powers, they attacked the stone cord, suspending it above the swamp. Despite their efforts, the structure remained intact, its material seemingly alive and self-repairing. Toa Ignika stepped forward, silently asserting his role in the battle. Drawing on the mask of life's unique power, he weakened the organic stone, causing it to snap and sending the hive plummeting into the swamp below. The Makuta and Shadow Matoran were forced to flee the collapsing structure, their plans temporarily thwarted. The Makuta regrouped in Antros's cavern, their frustration palpable after the Toa Nuva's daring attack. Mutran's fury was unmatched. The destruction of his Shadow Leech vats had obliterated weeks of painstaking work. His anger was tempered only by Antros's commanding presence, who warned that infighting would serve only to weaken them further. The tense conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Icarax. His disdain for Antros and the Brotherhood's grand plan was evident, and he made no effort to hide his contempt. Yet, Mutran's revelation that the Silent Toa had been wearing the Kanohi Ignika piqued his interest. The Mask of Life was a prize worth pursuing, even for one as arrogant as Icarax. Antros wasted no time in assigning him the task of hunting down the mysterious Toa and recovering the mask. The Makuta's counterattack began with a thunderous assault on the last remaining Av-Matoran village. Antros, Kirox and Vampra led the initial charge, their combined powers turning the settlement into a wasteland. Shadow blanketed the village, smothering the light vines, while destructive storms and sonic attacks reduced the structures to rubble. Meanwhile, Icarax and Mutran targeted the underground shelter, tearing through its defenses with plasma and raw force. When Icarax finally breached the hatch, he discovered the shelter was empty. The Matoran and Toa Nuva had vanished. Furious, he stormed out, demanding an explanation. The answer came from Gavla, who found Shadow Matoran bound with light vines in one of the captured villages. These prisoners revealed that the Toa had anticipated the attack and abandoned the village, heading toward the caves in search of a keystone. The Makuta took to the skies in pursuit, only to be ambushed by the Toa Nuva. Pohatu attacked first, dislodging massive stalactites and hurling them at the flying Makuta. Kopaka and Liwa joined the assault, their precise coordination disrupting the Makuta's formation. The battle was chaotic and brutal, with both sides leveraging their powers to gain the upper hand. Liwa created whirlwinds to counter Icarax's cyclones, saving two Av-Matoran from a deadly fall. Pohatu's quick thinking and unrelenting strikes kept Antros on the defensive, while Kopaka and Solek worked together to shield their allies from Mutran's mental assaults. Toa Ignika, though silent, played a crucial role. He manipulated the environment, weakening the Makuta's footing and creating openings for his allies. Despite their initial success, the battle turned when Icarax used his gravity powers to ground Pohatu and Phantoka. The Toe of Stone and his Matoran companion plummeted toward the swamp. Kopaka and Lewa scrambled to mount a rescue, but the Makuta regrouped quickly, pressing their advantage. Pohatu recovered mid-fall, using his elemental powers to create a platform of stone to break their descent. Lewa unleashed a devastating cyclone that scattered the Makuta, buying enough time for the Toa to retreat. Toa Ignika observed the battle unfold from a distance, his newly awakened mind struggling to process the chaos. The clash of powers, the shifting tides of the fight, and the raw determination of the combatants captivated him. As the Mask of Life, he had witnessed life and death unfold countless times, but never had he felt the sensations of the battlefield firsthand. His focus turned to Icarax, whose presence radiated malice. The Makuta loomed over Pohatu and Phantoka, clearly preparing a fatal strike. Something stirred within Ignika, a burgeoning sense of responsibility and camaraderie. Without hesitation, he propelled himself forward, directing his craft toward Icarax with purpose. Ignika's blade struck the Makuta. Icarax turned, startled, then sneered at the new combatant. Icarax attacked with ferocity, using his ability to shift density to evade Ignika's strikes and retaliate with devastating blows. A single punch sent Ignika flying from his vehicle, forcing him to cling to its edge to avoid plummeting into the swamp. But Icarax's taunts had triggered something deep within Ignika. The mask's ancient curse stirred, a consequence for any unworthy being who dared to assault or claim it. Ignika summoned his power, unleashing an unseen force that surged through Icarax's essence. The Makuta's form, once pure energy encased in armor, began to revert and devolve. Muscles and organic tissue materialized within his armor, but the sudden transformation caused searing agony. The Makuta's armor, designed only to contain energy, began to crack under the strain of the growing flesh. The cavern echoed with Icarax's screams. For the first time in eons, a Makuta was brought to his knees in torment. Mutran's frustration boiled over as he took stock of the fight. Icarax writhed in pain, Antros was wounded, and Kirox was barely holding his own. Drawing on the last reserves of his shadow energy, Mutran unleashed a devastating burst of darkness. The blast engulfed the entire cavern, forcing both friend and foe to retreat. The Toa regrouped, their breaths heavy but their resolve unbroken. Kopaka eyed the retreating Makuta with cold determination. The keystones they sought were in the swamp, and the Makuta now had a head start. As the Toa took flight, Toa Ignika followed close behind. Though his silence remained unbroken, his actions spoke volumes. He was no longer just a mask or an observer. He was one of them. Makuta Teridax, leader of the Brotherhood and architect of the plan, was far removed from the conflict in Karda Nui. He had ventured into a legendary, enigmatic region of the universe. Vast, complex, and unparalleled even to one as ancient and cunning as he. Reaching this place had required cunning and sacrifice. Having abandoned his physical form in the pit, Teridax now existed as pure energy, a swirling storm of power unbound by flesh. This state proved his greatest asset. The intricate defenses here, designed to obliterate physical intruders, were powerless against a formless being. As he advanced deeper into this alien domain, Teridax allowed a sliver of thought to drift to Karda Nui. The Brotherhood, led by Antros, was locked in battle with the Toa Nuva. Though the Makuta wielded overwhelming power, Teridax knew Toa had a way of defying odds, drawing strength from desperation and hope where none should exist, and he was counting on it. Destiny. Teridax respected it as an unyielding force, unlike the naive virtues of unity and duty. The Toa would fulfill their destinies, but only as pawns in his design. The chamber around him hummed with latent power. At its center stood a carving of a Kanohi Ignika, symbol of Mata Nui. Teridax drifted before it, his energy coiling as he studied the Great Spirit's emblem. The plan was reaching its zenith. The universe would remember this day, not as the triumph of Mata Nui, but as the moment Teridax seized it all. The Toa Haga stood amidst the wreckage of Zia, their battle against the towering Tartorak and the ferocious Kanohi dragon, leaving the industrial hub in ruins. But Monga, empowered by his Mask of Growth, had wrestled the Tartorak to the ground after a grueling struggle, using his mastery of leverage to overcome the beast's immense strength. Pooks wasted no time binding the subdued Rahi with unbreakable stone chains. The Kanohi dragon lay motionless, his massive body sprawled across the southern district. Norik's precision strikes and Qualis' ice attacks had forced it into submission, while Iruni had ensured its thrashing limbs didn't get eaten by the living mountain, a hungry landmark that could turn the beast into sustenance. Among the team, Garki stood apart, her focus drawn not to the battlefield but to distant visions. Her Mask of Clairvoyance triggered, immersing her in a world only she could see. The others recognized the signs. She had glimpsed something approaching, a threat of immense scale. Qualis soon confirmed their fears. His summoned Smokehawk, soaring high above the shattered city, relayed a chilling sight. An armada of ships blotting out the waves, their crews armed to the teeth. From his perch on a crumbling spire, Iruni verified the report. Acting without hesitation, he vanished in a flash, teleporting directly to the lead ship using his Mask of Quick Travel. Iruni found himself surrounded by warriors. Two figures stood apart from the rest, their commanding presence impossible to ignore. The first, a towering figure with an aura of cold authority, was the Shadowed One, leader of the Dark Hunters. Beside him stood his lieutenant, Ancient, exuding a quiet but deadly strength. The fleet's purpose was unmistakable. This was no ordinary Dark Hunter raid, no simple plundering mission. It was an overwhelming invasion. On the flagship's deck, surrounded by enemies, Hiruni prepared himself for the battle to come, his cyclone spear at the ready. Suddenly, the sea heaved unnaturally, the waves rising into an enormous wall of water that dwarfed the ships. The wave hung suspended, poised to crash down and annihilate the entire fleet. On the bow of the flagship, a toe of water appeared, her spiked mace raised. Her bearing radiated authority, her control over the wave absolute. Flanking her were a towering, golden-armored figure and a four-armed giant holding an object draped in cloth. With a subtle motion, the wave surged forward, coming within moments of swallowing the fleet before halting again. Even the Shadowed One hesitated, his air of control faltering in the face of this show of power. Moments later, the Golden Warrior vanished briefly and returned, bringing the other 5 Toahaga to the flagship. They arrived to a scene of sharp contrasts. Dark Hunters uneasy, their infamous leader uncharacteristically silent, and the Toe of Water firmly in command. Her intentions were soon made clear. She was Helrix, leader of the Order of Mata Nui. The Toahaga were not being given a choice but a command. They were to assist in the Order of Mata Nui. Their task, track the whereabouts of the elusive Makuta Teridax. Reports suggested he had abandoned his Maxilos body near Mari Nui, his current plans unknown. Teridax's movements posed a significant threat, and the Order had no intention of letting him remain free. As the Toahaga processed this, Helrix introduced their unlikely guide, Zaktan. Encased in a globe of water and seething with fury, the former leader of the Paraka offered critical knowledge of the Brotherhood's operations. His cooperation was ensured only by his captivity. As they prepared themselves, Gaki suddenly stiffened. Her mask of clairvoyance had activated. This mission would lead them into unknown dangers, and not all of them would emerge. Helrix then made a stark revelation. The Dark Hunters now worked for her, and this invasion was her doing. After 100,000 years of hiding, the Order of Mata Nui was finally going to reveal itself and strike at the Brotherhood of Makuta. The Destiny Wars had begun. As the Toa Nuva fight to awaken Mata Nui, a greater war erupts across the universe. The Order of Mata Nui has finally revealed itself, launching a bold campaign against the Brotherhood of Makuta. But victory will require more than just brute force. It will take an unlikely team, the Federation of Fear, sent on a mission to locate a powerful new ally. Their journey and the beginning of the Destiny War will be explored in the next episode. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next chapter.